Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's session. Today is session 2 of the 2 sessions that we are running to help you to get ahead with SQM. So just as a reminder, some of you may have attended the other series. We had a session run in the afternoon, and of course today is the morning session. So last week we had already run a similar session to today, but you are most welcome to join today as well. Some of you may have attended the first session in the afternoon. Some of you may have attended the first session in the morning. Either way, we had basically paused or stopped at exactly the same point. So we will carry on from the same point from there on and see what the rest of SQM has in store for us. So let's just carry on with the slides and then see what we have. First of all, just a reminder again, or for those of you that maybe didn't attend the first session and are going to watch that on the recording, my name is Juané Schreuder. I'm an independent consultant, and specifically with regards to SQM, I am the content owner for SQM. What that means is basically I help Caseware Africa to come up with all the library items, even the mandatory ones, to help word them that are available in the SQM product. I am also one of the persons that sometimes I like to say dream up, but that think of how the product should help us as users to implement and affect what the standards require from us. So I also help with some of the specifications there. And then, of course, there's a team that takes that from an audit language and puts it into the technology for us. So that's just a little bit about myself. For today's session, the session is recorded and all attendees are on mute and your cameras have been turned off. Please note, if the signal is lost, you can just exit the webinar and enter it again. I will also monitor the questions to see if there really is a lot of questions about the sound. Then that might be an indication that the problem is actually on my side. So if you do experience problems, you're welcome to let me know. And then also maybe just another thought that if you are using the app, it might be better for you to rather use sorry, if you are on the web browser rather, it might be better for you to download the app and to join the session through the app. That is just that we found the connection to be a bit more stable if you are connecting through the app rather than the web browser. However, I guess if you're not experiencing any problems, stay where you are if you want to. And of course, then don't start going onto any other web browsers, which is basically going to affect the quality as well. The moment you start sending and receiving emails or opening other apps and using extra bandwidth, that's really when the quality of the sound and the visuals for today will be a little bit less good. And then also what I am trying to do is when I change a slide over, I do try not to talk too much in between. Of course, on the app itself, there I'm constantly doing things, but I am trying not to go too quickly when I change screens drastically, really just because what we found is the app really gives preference to the visual and then the sound comes afterwards. All right, so I'll try and monitor that from my side as well. That's that for this slide. So we have said that we are recording it. And then I've mentioned the questions block. So I am monitoring the questions. If you have any questions, any comments, please feel free to submit them as they come up. If they are relevant to that session or that point where we are at, I will address them. Otherwise, I might only address them towards the end. But you're welcome to send the questions as they come up. Where to find them, I've included a little screenshot for you there as to what your dashboard is probably looking like, and so that you can then from there see where and how to open up that questions chat block on your dashboard. All right, so please, as I've said there as well on the slide, you are encouraged to participate. All right, for the sake of the bandwidth, I am going to switch off my camera. You've all seen what I look like, and then I am going to focus on our slides and our screens. Right, so first off, in the previous session, you might remember that we had this little circle, this SQM process. Now, in the previous session, we discussed the settings and how to set up your SQM. We also then spend a lot of time on the design of your system of quality management. And towards the end of the session, we published that designed system of quality management, or the draft system. We published that to the operate module, which is where the staff will then have access to the system of quality management, and from where we can then literally operate within the system. So where we can use the system. I have had some questions in the first sessions where people would ask, but can I not just use the PDF export by itself? Can I not just use it offline? I guess you could in theory, but you will see today that the big value add for SQM, and specifically SQM on cloud, is that we are going to have these automated tasks and the technology literally letting us know and helping us to keep track of what must be done. So I'm hoping to show you and I guess convince you of the benefit in that regard. All right, next up then, we will also look at Operate Overview, which is the module where we can then overview, if you want, or can have a look and to some degree monitor the progression and the completion of tasks, the completion of the actions that need to be done on SQM. We will also look at Monitor, how the firm can use SQM to monitor the system's operations. And lastly, we will look at the Evaluate module, which obviously is where the person or the persons with ultimate responsibility will be doing their conclusion, if you want, on whether the system is in fact complying with the ISQM 1 standard. All right, so let's also just have a look at the picture that we looked at in the first session, being our little process. So again, we started up, we did our settings, we did the setup, we gave all the users the necessary access, and then we documented the understanding of the firm. Now, specifically want to remind you of this. This is where we had the space and the prompts to document how we understand our firm. What do we understand the firm's risks to be, clients, etc., service areas, and so forth. Also remember that during the year, you can't just update this once off and it will stay the same forever. Your firm will change from time to time. So as and when changes happen, you should come back to that design understanding module and actually go and change what has changed. And of course, with that, consider whether that has any impact on your quality objectives, on your recorded risks, on your risk assessment, and I suppose if you go all out on how best to amend, if necessary, your responses, your policies, procedures, and tasks. Right. What we then went through to, we designed everything and we published, and now we are going to be operating our firm system. And I guess the big important word there is the execution of all those designed policies, procedures, and tasks. All right, and then from there, just in a different format, going through monitoring, making the changes as necessary, and performing the evaluation. Right, so let's go to the product and have a look at what's happening there. So I'm going to start with looking at the product itself. This is where our landing page is. You might remember that in our previous session, we were actually working in the design module. So just to show you what the little sub-menu items were there, all the page menu items would probably look familiar to you: responsibilities, objectives, risks, etc. But we've already published our system. If we go to review and publish, you will see that on Friday, the 23rd of August, we approved the system, and we also published the system on the Friday, the 23rd. So that's the system that's currently in operation. As a reminder, not all your staff will have access to your design module, so they will need to see the system in the operate module. Operate is the module that all staff will have access to as soon as they are allocated access to SQM. They at the very least have access to operate. You might remember that we had to specifically allocate access to design, operate, overview, monitor, and evaluate, but the moment you gave someone access to SQM, they had access to operate. All right, in Operate, first of all, we have two different versions to see the firm system of quality management. So let's have a look at the table. Firstly, the table shows you the firm system. What is a really helpful function here is that we can actually then just search ethics, search something in there, and it will actually then filter the product for you. You are also able to filter for specific types of items. So maybe you just want to see all the objectives, or you only want to see all the risks or tasks or something like that. All right, so that's the functionality there. At any point in time, you can click on an item and it will open up the dialogue, the card if you want, what's been recorded there, and the user can see what has been recorded. It is a read-only format because it's already been signed off, it's been published. The user shouldn't be making changes to it, but they can at least then see the full objective, the full additional description, things like that if necessary. All right, that's your published SoQM in a tabular format. In a manual format, that's the next page menu item. There you are currently seeing these blue lines. Now, the system of quality management in a manual is really helpful in that you can also, again, collapse and expand items. We can either collapse and expand everything at the same stage. So if I expand all the items, then you can see that I've still got my blue lines, but in between each of the blue lines, I have other items. Now, the colors are also there to help you to remember what the items are. So the blue is your objective, red is your risk, the dark green is your policy response, and then the lighter green, if you want, is your personnel requirements, and at the bottom, the orange, your task. And then we start again with an objective and so forth. If I have more than one risk linked to an objective, before I go to the next objective, I will have another risk. Or if I've got two policies, etc., they will all be linked to the objective, as you can see on the left-hand side as well. So we believe them to be really user-friendly and helpful visually, also to monitor or to see what is in this system of quality management. Again, each of these items can be opened up to see the dialogue, and you can simply scroll down and have a look at what's in there as necessary. In a question whether I can print this, maybe you need, I know in one of the other regional areas, there is a requirement to give a system, well, to provide a reviewer, an inspector, or a peer reviewer with a copy of your system of quality management. That is then possible in a PDF format. I need to warn you though, it's only the policies and procedures, basically. It's a dead version of your SoQM. So it would not include, it will not include any access to, for example, your tasks that's been completed or anything. So it's literally just the same format that we can see here with your different items. Mine is just currently set to black and white, but you can print it in color, of course, and then you still have the blues and the reds and the whatnots. What we have available here is at the top left, you can include your firm's logo that is set in your normal cloud setting. So where you add the logo for logging into your Caseware Cloud, it's the same logo that's used here. We'll indicate the date of printing so that a person can see when this starts to get outdated. Unique IDs, and then also right at the very bottom, we will clearly in the disclaimer explain that this was just basically a snapshot at a point in time, and that the system may have changed since printing it since then. And of course, again, the actual interactions that happen on SQM not being included on your print version. Right, so it's possible to print it, but has very limited use for you. All right, so that was the SQM table and manual. Then next up, we had allocated responsibilities to staff members within our firm. Now, in our case last week, I only allocated all the elements, all the roles to myself. It made it easier for the sign-off in that setup. But if I had allocated it to more than one person, those individuals would all have been listed here. If and only if they had signed off the responsibility and someone had reviewed them. Right, but here, all staff can see, oh, this is the person, Juané is the person responsible for the ultimate responsibility, or the person with the responsibility for monitoring, etc. What you might also see is that in many instances, it is possible to export this to Excel, and of course, you can also modify the columns that you see if you want to do that. I just want to go and show you that in design, we had signed off these responsibilities, because if they were not signed off, they would not have been transferred. So there you can see that I've accepted and reviewed, and the status is reviewed. Right, so that was where we set it up. And then we also see where the items are communicated to staff, which again is one of the responsibilities of ISQM 1. All right, so that's just in terms of firm. I've set up my system, I've established my policies and procedures. This is what you should be aware of. Go and read it. Now, let's start to execute those procedures. And so, firstly, this is just for myself. So I was a staff member when the system was set up. And you will probably remember that we set up an automated task, a scheduled task to run yesterday, which was the 26th of August, to automatically land in my system, and also sent me an email to say there is a task for you, so that I could know that I have to come onto SQM and come and complete a task, which was scheduled for me. I didn't have to remember to do it. I just had to come onto the system. So I can see that by looking at the first column that says automatic. I can look at the title, click on that if I need, or in terms of actions, I can go and select edit. You shouldn't or can't delete automated tasks because they've been automated. You have to complete them. But if I do create a manual task, as we're going to do shortly, and I realize I made a mistake, I can delete that and create a new one. Not if they have been submitted, but still while they are in progress. All right, so let's go and see what does this task involve. So I'll click on the edit button, edit icon. And the system automatically opens up my form for me. Now, this is the task that we created in JSON format, and you will see that it looks very similar to the task form that we created or designed and signed off on last week. Notice on the right-hand side, the workflow stage is indicated as in progress because I have not completed it yet. And then it gives me all the information that I need to complete. It prompts me. So I will just select, because I've already completed this a number of times and it will save us time, I'm just going to select my name from that previous content. When am I completing it? I'm completing it today. So using a calendar functionality. How old am I? This was the new field that we added in, all right? So please don't go and say, oh, Juané said we must have that field, right? That field was how I showed you how to develop the form. So I'm just going to put in a date there or a year there. I'm 21 years old, still nice and young, eh? And then I will go and click on all the check boxes because I need to, seeing the red asterisks, I know that I have to sign off on all of them before I can submit the form. Because when we designed it, that's what we indicated. So there's a lot of content in the annual ethics declaration, I know, and I also know that it is quite intimidating to some firms to see this. When I designed it, I've taken a number of considerations into account. I looked at various instances where I had actually designed this for firms, and even though it is a long form, I do believe that this is all required. All right, do you believe, okay, sorry, I mustn't click all of them, then that's going to be a confusion. Let me just focus. This is now talking and doing at the same time, then I have a problem. So in any instance, I need to complete and confirm the relevant responses. Right at the bottom, I declare that all the information above is correct and true and complete. Once I'm done with that, I select submit. Once I select submit, you will see that the workflow stage is going to change to completed, and the form will also become a read-only form. So I cannot change my responses. Just waiting for that submit to come through. Just want to check if all my form, there we go. So I had in fact completed all the required fields and it is coming through, regenerating the form, showing it to be approved. Right, so it's done and the form cannot be edited anymore. You can see that it's now read only. Okay, so I can close this field and it will also go back to the original SQM and now show the status as submitted. That's the automated task. Let's go and now create a manually created task. So you'll remember that we attended the training on Friday, and our firm's policies and procedures says that when I'm attending any training, I need to record it in the firm's training register. So in this plus icon, I will click there and I have the functionality to add a task. Click to add the task. I will select the relevant tasks from the menu. Training attendance is the very first one. I need to give it a description. This is a nice one to be able to identify it, or at least identify it to be separate from any other. So I'm going to say SQM webinar 1 of 2. We'll be able to see where that goes, and click create once I've selected the task and given it its unique description. The task is then created, and I will then be able to go and complete the form. The relevant form, which is then obviously a little bit shorter than the annual ethics declaration. Right, so the form is reflected, coming up. Again, you can see the workflow stage being in progress because I haven't submitted it yet. And the form much shorter. So again, what is the course name? So that was the SQM webinar 1 of 2. Who was the presenter? Juané. What type of skill was trained? Let's say enabling and technical competencies. Again, select the course date. This was Friday, so I'll go and select Friday the 23rd, and my name being Juané. I confirm that I completed all the tasks required and click submit. So this is effectively one entry into my training register. You can do the same with a consultations register, with a register of ethical breaches, any of those registers which you would normally have in either a hard copy or Excel or something like that. I now have it available as a task within SQM. So no longer lots of loose ends to keep track of. All right. Oh, I didn't complete that part, or I must have unticked it. So let's just complete that. Loading. Good. So now when I go back to my SQM system, this is now as an individual, this is what I'm seeing. So I've submitted both of those forms, and you can also see my description there, SQM webinar 1 of 2. I see a question coming in, so just give me a second to quickly read that, please. Oh, I see the question about the question from the previous session, and then the network disconnected. You can print these forms in the format that they were in terms of the web-based, the way that we saw them now, but they basically not really going to serve you any purpose. And my concern also with that is if you print them before the time, so before they are completed, then they are already allocated to an individual. So it's going to look really funny. So this is basically what it's going to look like if I do print it. So let me show you what the print preview is, because they were never designed to be printed actually. So you're going to see this funny thing, okay? And if you print them after they've been completed, then yeah, they're probably also going to print really strangely. So the benefit really is to have the forms completed online. There is no accommodation for having them printed as PDF. The benefit of SQM is doing it on Caseware Cloud and having it sent to staff between the different sessions. All right. So that being tasks, and I showed you the automated as well as the manual tasks. I'm going to skip the page menu item on operate for findings right now, because currently we don't have findings. When we get to monitoring, I'm going to show you how the individual user, let's say the audit manager or the audit partner whose file is reviewed, or the individual in the firm system of quality management that has a specific responsibility, when that person receives a finding in the system, how to respond to that. So that will just be where we're going to come at that point in time. I'm going to move on to operate overview. Now, operate overview is a special place. Again, not all users will have access to this. And this is really for those individuals in your firm that need to monitor that tasks are in fact being completed, maybe monitor the content in those tasks. So let's say, for example, I want to see whether everybody's completed their training record of having attended the session on Friday. Or I want to see, has everybody completed their annual ethics declarations? I will then give that person that needs to do all of those tasks the operate overview access. Currently, what you have in the system today, as in Tuesday, 27 August, this is what you will have. Once I've shown you this, I'm going to show you what we will have from Thursday in the new upgraded version. So every few weeks we release extra functionality, and this week there is some extra functionality being released for Operate Overview, which I regard to be really, really exciting. But before we get there, let's just see how to use task responses. So there's no new tasks being created here. This is only monitoring, basically, or seeing, viewing what has been done by everyone in the firm system. So in Operate Tasks, I only saw my own tasks. In Operate Tasks, Operate Overview Task Responses, I see what everyone's done, including my own. So I can there go and select different tasks. If I have a long list of tasks, I can even search for the task. And let's say, for example, training attendance, I can see that one record has been generated. In this case, it's the one that I did. And it currently has a number of columns. So I'm going to tidy up the columns so that we just see the bare minimum of what we really need to see. But what is then very helpful is I can actually go into this and see the actual record just in PDF format. So really helpful then if I need to see something which doesn't just tell me, okay, you know, this was the course name, who completed it, etc. But if I need to see something more. Again, you can export it to Excel to monitor, to check, and so forth. Let's say I see, because now I see this one didn't actually submit, it still says in progress. When I see in progress and I know, okay, this person hasn't signed off the form yet, or maybe it was an automated task, not in the training records, obviously that's not an automated task, but I want to go and follow up and say, Juané, this form is not submitted, you haven't completed your annual ethics declaration, whatever the case is. It's as simple as then using the Caseware Cloud functionality, discussions, tasks, to actually then go and put in a task or a comment to that person to say, please go and follow up, complete your tasks so that we've got the system compliant. All right, if I go to the task 5, the annual ethics declarations, here I will have quite a number of additional forms submitted. Now just bear with me because this obviously isn't very helpful, so I just want to actually quickly hide some of the columns so that we can see a bit more about the actual content. Of course, again, we could create or open up every one of the records individually, but I want to show you what we can see when we've got less columns and how to actually use that. Unfortunately, the columns at this point in time doesn't actually stay. So I can do this now, and the moment I refresh my page, those hidden columns actually default back to what it was. So that's also why the developers are actually going to make the content look a lot less when we actually land on the page. And then you can always add additional columns if you want to see more. Okay, we're already starting to get to a point where we can see a bit more. Good. Right, here we can see quite a bit. I'm not going to worry about the rest of the columns for now, but we can see we've got a few forms in progress. 2 of the forms were already in progress from last week. So one being staff member that was added, a person submitting a form. It looks like these 2 were probably deleted or something, or they are still in progress for some reason. But what we can rather look at are these 3 at the bottom. So 2 of the members, I only had 2 staff members in the system when we generated it on Friday. So those 2 staff members, Hendrik, Maria, and Juané, received the form. Okay, remember we are working on the annual ethics declaration form. So they received the form yesterday, which was the 26th of August, which is exactly the way that we set up that task. When we set up the procedure, we said send all of our current staff a form on the 26th of August to complete their annual ethics declaration. So that's exactly what happened then with our staff members. I didn't load hundreds of staff members, but those ones have been sent. The first person has actually completed it. The second one is still in progress. I could then therefore go and say, listen, you should have already completed it. Please, will you complete it? Of course, realistically speaking, that is only, it's only a day later, so we wouldn't necessarily expect the person to have completed it. And then also this morning, just have a look at this. Just shortly ago, I'd listed a new staff member this morning because I specifically did not want it to show us yesterday, because yesterday we sent the annual ethics declarations for all staff. So this morning I added a new staff member. Our task from last week in our system said, whenever a new staff member is added, send them the annual ethics declaration. They should get the same form as the rest of the staff, but send it when they are loaded. So of course, this person wasn't loaded yesterday, it was only loaded today. And just a few minutes ago, the system automatically sent them a form to say, Mr. Staff Member New, please go and complete your annual ethics declaration. You missed it when it was sent out to all the normal staff. Now you have to actually complete it for this year. Right, so that's fantastic. And we can see, of course, it hasn't been completed yet. Poor staff member probably hasn't even received his email address or his login or anything yet it's there waiting for him or her on Caseware Cloud. So that is fantastic. All right, that's the current operate overview. So let's see, how's this going to change for the with the new release from Thursday. And remember also, just when SQM is updated, when there's a new release, you don't need to install anything. It's on your browser, so it automatically comes in when you are logging in. There is a little notification to say you can see what's new, but it automatically appears in your system. All right, so this is another platform. What you would normally have seen, you would have seen the task responses. Okay, that last page menu item from where you can then go and select tasks, etc. However, we're now introducing a dashboard, which is what you saw just now with the little yellows and greens. The dashboard firstly deals with all tasks in the system and then also has a function to filter by user or by task. So let's just see what we have. We have how many tasks are in operate. So this is a testing site, so you'll see obviously thousands of them. We operate tasks that are in progress, well, minus a few, and then the completed tasks, only 22 tasks have been completed. All right. I can see how old my tasks are. So there's 21,000 that are between 31 and 90 days, a few of them being 91 to 180 days. Operate tasks by status. Remember, these are not the same tasks as the one that was created yesterday and today. All right. So that's on a separate site, which is why we don't see new tasks. That is a separate site that I'm on. I'm just showing you the beta site for the new releases that we're going to see on Thursday. That's why there's no tasks in the last few days. Just in case you are wide awake and thinking, but hang on, where are our tasks that we just released this morning or yesterday? So the first one, operate tasks by status. So in progress, only a few of them are completed, a teeny tiny little piece of green there. And then operate tasks by the user status. So the bulk of the tasks have been sent to users that are currently active, but there are also a few tasks that have been sent to users that have been deleted from the system. I could also have staff that are inactive. Maybe they're on maternity leave or something like that, and I've actually made them inactive. Then that is also possible to be reflected here, but we don't have any of those at the moment. I could then also see tasks either in my current SoQM. This is a very interesting one. So any task that is in my system of quality management currently, the annual ethics declaration, the task, things like, the training records, etc. But if I had a task in my system previously, and I have since actually deleted, deactivated that SoQM, that task from my firm system of quality management, then I can actually filter and say which tasks were previously in my firm system of quality management and are no longer there. All right, so that can then also give me some information, and you will see, for example, the very first thing, operated tasks completed are at least 7. Whereas if we had all of them, that was 22. All right, so that could also be helpful. I could go and filter by task, by user, select a few tasks, select a few users. I can see which tasks were created by the users themselves. These are obviously, in our example that we looked at earlier, would be your training attendance register. So a few tasks created by the users themselves, as opposed to those created by the system, which are our automated tasks, the tasks that are like our annual ethics declaration, etc. So those are the sources that we could use. And then again, we can have a look at active, inactive, or deleted. We can also have a look at when the tasks were created, and then only look at it from that side. So just really a very good overview that you will have in these dashboards to help you. Of course, again, you can always filter, you can always go and have a look at more detail. Just to show you, rather than having this little bar, you will have the actual users listed for the tasks. If you have it by user, and by task, you will have it by the individual tasks, and you can see how many have been completed, not completed, etc. So we are very excited to make this available to you, and also hopeful that you will find it extremely helpful. We are envisaging similar dashboards in upcoming releases for things like design and maybe even the user's own tasks. Right, so that was operate overview. I'm back to our own system. And what we're going to look at next will be monitor. Now, before I go and look at the actual monitor module, I want us to just have a look at some of the, let's call it theory. It's not really theory, but I want to highlight a few points from the standards requirements to hopefully also help you to see why we develop certain items the way they are, or why they are operating the way they are. Why are we prompting you for information that might feel like a waste of time sometimes, I know, or even just why do this way, or why do this that way, or yeah, maybe just to help you with that. So first of all, in terms of the monitoring and remediation process, the standard requires the firm to have a monitoring and remediation process that will provide relevant, reliable, and timely information about the firm's design of a system of quality management. So we also need to actually monitor and go and check whether the firm appropriately designed the system of quality management. Then secondly, the implementation thereof. And of course, I'm sure all of us understand that you also need to check the operation of the firm system of quality management. So in most cases, we've always checked, have all annual ethical declarations been received? Have all of this done? Have all of that been done? But now we're also taking it one step further to say, was the firm system of quality management appropriately designed? Right. And then secondly, as part of that process, to make sure that appropriate action is taken timeously, and that those are also that the deficiencies are actually remediated. So it's not just, oh, let's go and do some training necessarily, but to really go and consider what are the root causes of this weakness, this deficiency, and then to go and actually fix, address, remediate those root causes. Right, so there's a lot of firms and places and countries that have been doing the so-called root cause analysis for a number of years, but now it's actually required in terms of the standard. And then also further, the purpose of this process is to ensure proactive and continual improvement of the firm's engagement quality, so the actual quality on the engagement, but also on the system of quality management. So it really is a process of continuously improving. And as you come across a problem, as you come across a weakness, as you come across a better way to have your procedure operate, to go back and redesign your system, improve it, reassess your quality risk, whatever the case may be, but to continuously have it updated so that you can have a proactive approach to quality management in your firm. In terms of monitoring and remediation, then also the standard requires a combination of ongoing monitoring as well as periodic monitoring. So the ongoing monitoring is referred to as routine activities that's built into the firm's processes, and that is performed real time. Now, what better way than using your operate overview dashboards? Eh? So that firstly, ongoing, continuously monitoring certain things, and then there are also some monitoring that happens periodically at certain intervals. And so we will give you the opportunity within the monitoring module to do both of those elements. All right, further then also just the standard requires that in the monitoring and remediation, it must include completed engagements. And note, it does not say audit engagements, which means that the firm needs to assess whether it's necessary to actually monitor other engagements. In a case where a firm only does, let's say, independent reviews and compilations, the requirement is still there to do the monitoring of completed engagements. So it might mean that you're not going to have any audit engagements if you don't do audit engagements, so you're going to select something else. All right, so the firm must include completed engagements. The firm must have a specification, a process, a policy to say which engagements are selected and then which partners, and have a cycle. I mean, you don't have to monitor every every partner every year, but then have a policy, have a process through which you indicate how do you select which engagements to monitor? How do you select which partners to monitor in this year, in this cycle? All right, and then just also important that the standard also requires policies and procedures to ensure that those performing the monitoring are also competent, capable, and have sufficient time, very important, to perform the monitoring, and further also that that individual performing the monitoring has the necessary objectivity rather is the right word, I guess. In other words, I can't do the monitoring of a file where I was also, let's say, a trainee or even an audit manager or a partner. It needs to be an objective person that's going to actually do the monitoring on that engagement file. So all of this information just really as a quick high-level introduction or overview to say why some of our library content, for example, is in there. So we've got library policies and procedures for ensuring that you're also selecting completed engagements, that you have a rotation cyclical basis, that you also ensure that you consider the competence, capability, the objectivity of your individuals performing the monitoring. Right, so that was just firstly in terms of an introduction. Then when we go to the monitor module, we start off with understanding. This understanding is different to the understanding that we had under design understanding. In design understanding, we wanted to understand our own firm so that we could identify risks, quality objectives, help us to assess the risk, etc. In the monitor understanding, the person performing the monitoring has to obtain an understanding again of the firm and what they do and those things. And for that, they can basically refer back to the initial understanding documented under design understanding. But the individual performing the monitoring must also understand how the firm went about developing their system of quality management. And so a number of the questions in here then under the design of the firm system of quality management actually prompts the user then to help the monitoring person to understand how that was done. How did you actually go about designing your process? How did you identify the risks? How did you assess the risks, etc.? So a number of questions then also included in there. And in a similar fashion to what we had in the past, you've got those input fields that will automatically expand as your content becomes more. You have your little annotation functionality, and you can also sign them all off as prepared by to see who completed these. And again, please update this every year as would be necessary. Right, so then the next thing that I want to highlight to you now already is that when we have procedures, objectives, anything that is in the design module, those will appear under the report of not monitored. In other words, every single one of those units will be here to show you that you must still design a monitoring activity for it. As soon as you've designed a monitoring activity for this element, in other words, objective, risk, policy, procedure, task, then they will disappear from this view, from this report. Because the moment that you don't have every single one of these items need to have a monitoring activity designed. It does not mean that as a firm you are going to monitor this every single year, But let's say, for example, we want to see that we do in fact have the objective of, what was that first objective? About personnel's internal communication, or the objective about engagement resources, etc. We want to see that that objective's been done. We want to see that the risk assessments be done. So again, there are library procedures. You don't have to think of all of this yourself, but you need to make sure that every element in your system of quality management is in fact covered by a monitoring activity. And then the person performing the monitoring will decide which of these procedures need to be monitored in an instance of monitoring, if I can call it that. Okay, we're going to get to the work programs just now, but that's the first part that you need to understand at least. All right, so this won't necessarily, I almost want to say, be completed or resolved or anything like that by simply completing the understanding part or the page menu item. It was just a nice place for you to be able to easily see what has not yet been addressed. From there, we then went already in the previous session to go and develop or design monitoring activities. And you might remember that we had the monitoring activity for the annual ethics declarations. And then we also had, if I just show you some of the firm-wide ones, we also had one about personnel developing competence and retention, specifically then dealing with the fact that we needed to make sure that the staff attended training and was sufficiently addressing that. Now, what you can see is that the applicable standards, the linked objectives, the risks, and so forth is actually not linked here, which is why they will actually still appear under the report of not being monitored. Right. I'm not going to worry about that too much right now. We have developed them. We did design them. We looked at the mandatory item also. So the mandatory item, let me just show you there. With mandatory 10, we do have, in fact, the objectives all listed there. We've got the policy, we've got the declaration. I think what I must do is maybe just to also link the risk there for you. So let's go and just see the risk that we had on Friday when we developed our declaration, our risk for annual declarations. The procedure was 10, the policy was 5. So let's just go and see the risk that was linked to that. I'm going to just unsign off that one. Then you can see I can change or make changes in this again. And then I will go and just quickly go and find the risk. That was risk 28, staff non-compliance with ethical requirements. Okay. The linked tasks that we had, there was the annual ethics declaration. I'm not sure why it's not reflected now. But now I've got a bunch of these items included in here. I could even, if I wanted to, actually go and link others, but let's just leave it there for now. So I've got a linked task, I've got a linked risk. I'm going to prepare, sign off as prepared by, and now we will see that everything's been linked, everything's been included. All right. So in terms of signed off procedures, we only have 2 procedures now. Ideally, you should have a procedure for every objective, risk, etc. Of course, you can combine it. Like we've just combined one relevant ethical requirements item for everything else. So all of the other items are there, but now after we've then completed the monitoring activities, we need to then go and develop our monitoring work programs. Now I've already completed one here, but I don't want to use that one. I will leave it as a backup. What you can see though is that I've already started work in it and it's showing in progress. So how will we go about setting up monitoring work programs? Well, remember, we're going to have continuous, ongoing, and we will also have periodic monitoring procedures. So the first monitoring that I would imagine we're going to do is to have a specific monitoring activity at a specific point in time to say we've now sent out our annual declarations to the staff. We've given them 2 weeks to complete it, and we now want to specifically go and check that they have in fact completed the annual ethics declarations. We allocated the responsibility of reviewing those declarations to Mr. Smith or whoever it was, and we want to also go and see that that person has in fact done what they needed to do. So did they check that everybody completed it? Did they check the content of it, etc.? So there's going to be a lot of procedures in doing that. It's not just going to be a one-step thing. So I'm going to actually go to my little plus or add new icon and add a work program. This will be what is the word now? A once-off, a unique work program. So in my work program description, I'm going to say monitor ethical declaration process, something like that, to make it stand out from the other, let's say quarterly, monthly, etc. Work programs. So monitor the ethical declaration process. I will have all of the tasks here. I'll be able to then actually filter them by frequency. I can filter them by areas. In this case, we only have the implementation of policies and procedures. I could actually filter them by component if I wanted to, by title, etc. But because we only have 2 here, I'm going to select the relevant ethical requirements, the annual ethics declaration taken, and I will probably scroll down and find all of the ones relevant to my ethical declaration and make sure that my work program for monitoring is going to include all of that. So someone in my firm is then going to be allocated this work program, and that person is going to open the work program. Okay, that person has to have access to monitor, so that's, I guess, one thing to note, and will perform the monitoring procedures from the monitor module. So I'm now going to perform the monitor work procedures, the monitoring of the ethical declarations, and I'm going to open up my work program. I will have individual procedures listed on the left-hand side. So my first one is going to be annual declarations, actions taken, document. Has someone, there's going to be pretty words to say, has someone actually gone about to check the content of the declarations and identified where actions needed to be taken? For example, a person whose close family member has a financial interest in one of our clients and done something about that. Okay, that's basically the thing. So as I complete each of these procedures, there might be 4, 5, 10, 20 procedures. As I complete them, I will either say, yes, this has been done, I've checked it, there was no exceptions, or I will mark it and say, actually, there was an exception. Okay. If I've not completed it, well, there will need to be an understanding or documentation as to why this has not been completed. This will typically be the case where we maybe have an engagement file monitor work program that says you have to perform the following 20 procedures, 30, 60 procedures when you are reviewing a file, and completed engagement file as part of your monitoring process. Will be the same format. We'll have a work program where we're going to say monitoring of an audit engagement file, monitoring of an independent review engagement file, etc. And you're going to allocate it as monitoring of ABC Pty Limited's engagement file, monitoring of XYZ's engagement file. So if I then for some reason don't complete it, let's say the references are to, I don't know, let's say to accounting estimates, and lo and behold, this engagement actually does not have accounting estimates. So there's no auditing of accounting estimates, and therefore this procedure has not been completed. All right, so that's what that would be used for. If I have a need to make a note for any reason, then I've got that space there to actually document whatever I found. There was 30 staff, only 29 received the request to complete it, or whatever the case was. And you can make your notes there as necessary. If you do have working papers, you could also include a URL where you could actually, then actually go and just include the URL to another working paper or something and link that up as well. Okay. Right. This one, the work program now shows completed, not because I've necessarily signed it off, but because I've made a note to each of or made a selection in each of the procedures. What I want to show you though is that when I do have an exception, I need to raise a finding. How do we do that? So here's my little red flag if you want. I'm going to raise a finding. That has already linked it to the monitoring activity of annual declaration actions taken. I'm going to have a title here to say, not all staff completed their declarations. And this will be finding 2, okay? 2 of 24. or whatever your finding number is going to be, if you're going to have your own little numbering form fashion. That have to be unique IDs though. Okay, finding, I'm going to say 2 staff members did not complete their ethical declarations. And I didn't go and look for anything further, so I just say, oh, we sent it to 2 members, they didn't complete the declaration. I'm going to then go and find the person that was responsible for ensuring this was done. Maybe the manager that needed to check on this. In the case of an engagement file, possibly the engagement partner or the engagement manager, one of them will be allocated, and I'll go and find them. So right now, just to be able to show you the interaction in the system and without me having to log in and log out with my multiple personalities, my multiple personalities is going to review myself within my own user. But what would normally happen is you're going to have a monitoring person completing this. So currently I have my monitoring person hat on, and I'm monitoring the firm's system and the firm's compliance with their own policies and procedures and raising findings. So now I see, oh, this has not been done. And the person that should have done this was my other personality. And I'm going to actually allocate that user and say, well, Juané, you should have checked that everybody should have completed the annual ethics declaration. So I'm marking that responsible party. I could send it for a response, but I also have the option to actually do it both in one go, save and send for response. Okay. The rest of the form, before I just do that, you can see I'm actually trying to scroll down. I cannot scroll down. So the process is a very step-by-step process. Cannot scroll down. That's all I can do at this point in time. Cannot sign it off, even cannot provide a response summary either. So I have to now save this finding recording and send it to a response for the responsible person being Juané. So as the monitoring person, I'm sending it off to that responsible person. Just waiting for it to be saved. Just giving it a moment to send it off. There we go. You will see in your screen the procedure, the findings been raised, and there by the red flags, there's one little point that's marked. The person will carry on with the next procedure, next procedure, next procedure, raise findings as they come up. And once it's done, close the work program. The work program now shows as completed. That means that I've performed the procedures, the monitoring procedures. I found the findings that I needed to, and they've been sent off to the relevant persons. Okay, we are going to, if I wanted to see, hang on, are my findings raised? Let's say you wanted to. As the monitoring person, still within the monitoring module, just below work programs, I have a table called findings. And you can then see your little finding there, find 24 that I've just raised. But I can't really do much about it. I could open it, but I can see that it's just been allocated to the responsible person being Juané in this case. All right, so now we're going to park the monitoring person. That person has performed the monitoring, raised the finding, and they are now sitting waiting for a response, maybe carrying on with another file review, something like that. What now happens is that Juané, the responsible person, the audit manager, maybe the quality administrator, someone like that, receives an email to say an activity has been raised for you, please go onto SQM. I go onto SQM, and under operate, okay, I don't have access to monitor. Under operate, I go to findings, and that's where I now see a finding raised. So finding that first one, 2 staff members did not complete their ethical declarations. I can see there's no response there yet, but I need to actually give a response. There's a little pen there for me. So I'm going to go in there. Right, see what the finding is that monitoring person has raised for me, and I need to then respond to it. Maybe just a little warning, once you've clicked submit in the screen, you cannot change the response, so make sure of your response before you click submit. There is a little back door, I'll show that to you, but just know that. Okay, so I see the monitoring person says not all staff completed their declarations, 2 staff members did not. Apologies. Oh, beg your pardon. All right, so I go and investigate and I see, oh, there are 2 staff members that actually left our firm's employ the day after the declarations were sent out. They were still active on Caseware Cloud, but they had already resigned and then left the firm's employ, therefore did not complete the current year's ethical declaration. Right, so I probably investigated it and I found that's the reason. So yes, it's a finding, but come on guys, let's be realistic. This is not a weakness in our system. This is the way it happened. You know, that's life, and I don't think it's a finding. I don't get all upset or anything. That's what I document to make sure that it is properly documented, it's recorded, and there we go. All right, so now that gets submitted. Just want to give it a chance to submit. There we go, closes off, and it now shows as a read only, and it shows the workflow stage as submitted. Read only, I cannot change it. All right, so I can close the screen now, and it takes me back then to the response. You can see there's like a little I there for the response, which means it's been done. I can look at it, but it's actually now been sent back to the person with the monitoring. They will now review my response to determine if this is a deficiency. So the deficiency is a term in the standard that says where you have deficiencies in the firm system of quality management, where a finding indicates that it's a deficiency, that deficiency needs to be remediated. So it's now up to the monitoring person to decide if this is in fact a deficiency. So I'm changing hats again. This is the person, the admin task, the quality administrator, or it was the audit manager or audit partner. I've responded to the finding that I received. Now, the monitoring person gets an email to say, dear Mrs. Monitoring Person, Juané has responded to your finding. Please will you go and have a look at what you responded. So monitoring person goes to findings, their findings, which lists all the findings raised by this person now. And I can now see, okay, I did receive a response. I can't see anything here, but I need to go and look, and I see, oh, there's the response from the responsible party. And I will go in because I haven't done my work yet. How do I know that? Well, one, there's a pen, but secondly, also, I cannot sign off on this finding yet. You can see there's like a, so I still need to document some things there. So if I then go into edit to go and complete the rest of my card or my dialogue here, I can go and see, oh, there she has responded. This is what she documented. What I will also see, and this is my little back door, in case that person clicked submit and wanted to add extra information, or you know how it goes, sometimes we have another follow-up question, etc., etc. Hopefully by then you either pick up the phone or you do a chat on Teams or some other way and be saying, okay, but this is what I understood. What is this actually about? Okay, whatever. And you can then actually, the monitoring person can then update the response with more information, or with the full information, or with the whatever. There is then space to document a summary of the discussion held. Right, so that's what happens then. And now the monitoring person has to assess, is this finding, there were 2 people that didn't complete the annual ethics declaration because they'd left the firm's employ. Is that a deficiency? Well, did they leave the firm's employ before the date of the deadline? No, they left before, so I guess it's not a deficiency, and I will say no. That's the end of the story for us now. I can document left before deadline. They did submit their annual ethics declaration last year. Whatever it is that you feel you need to document to say, why is this not a deficiency? Why is this not indicative of a deficiency of the firm's system of quality management? Okay, so there's no weakness in the policy. There's no weakness in the procedure. It's just life happened, and that's why this thing wasn't done. Once I've done that, I can sign off. Of course, the flip side to this could be that I say, actually, this is a deficiency. So I'm going to show that to you with another deficiency or another finding. In this case, our first finding is not a deficiency. We're going to sign off. We've completely or properly documented why this is not a deficiency. We've indicated it's not a deficiency. That's the end of the story for that finding. Just want to give it a moment to save that sign off. There we go. Right. So this one now says, is this deficiency a finding? No. I see it didn't actually do my sign off. There, it's signed off now. Good. Right. Whereas another one that I had actually indicated another finding. It happened to also be sent to Juané for whatever reason. Okay. My goodness. I must have clicked on save. Apologies. So here's another finding. I also raised the finding. I apologize. It's for some reason it's not loading. Okay, but what you can see here is that in the deficiency, I had actually indicated in the finding, rather, I'd actually indicated it as having a deficiency. So then I needed to document the reason for the deficiency. Let's go there quickly. Response. There's the deficiency. I said it is severe. So the standard says when you actually assess something to be a deficiency, a finding is a deficiency, you need to indicate or assess the severity of that deficiency on the firm's system of quality management, as well as the pervasiveness, to consider those two things to assess the effect on the firm's system of quality management. So it's almost like saying, how bad is this? Okay. In concluding on that, then you need to document. Now I've got the problem with the screen again. I need to then document who I'm allocating this task to. So I've already erased this beforehand because it's almost as if there's like a little delay in raising this finding. So a similar thing happened to me last week, and I think it's just because I'm jumping back and forth, back and forth, back and forth with items. So I'd already allocated this again to myself. So if I save it now, we're going to be able to see that on the card. All right, so let me show it to you this way. We had recorded it as a finding, we've assessed the effect, and then I again allocated it to a responsible person. So the difference here was, first I said, I found this, why? Give me information, what happened here? The person responded and said, actually, this and this and this is what happened, whatever the case is, the reason may not make any sense for us now. And I went back and I said, but this is not good, it's not right. It's showing there's a problem. It's showing the SQM is maybe not set up appropriately. It's showing our parameters were not appropriate. It's showing that our policy was not covering all the elements. It's showing something. So that is then a deficiency, and I've allocated it to my responsible party, being Juané in this case. So let's go back now to the responsible party side. Maybe go to that responsible party side, the finding that they have there, and actually just document that. Let me just see, it might be that this person's response is not saved. I had recorded the response earlier on. It is showing as in progress. Okay, it has been submitted, so, okay, good. But what I can now see, the difference between the last one, you can see, find the bottom one where we had submitted the response and then assessed it as not being a deficiency. There's no remedial action prompt. You can see that block on the bottom right, the gray one is empty. There's no remediation required when it is not a deficiency. But when it is assessed as a deficiency, I then have a remediation response, which is the next prompt. So again, the responsible party person, the manager, the quality administrator is going to get a notice to say, please go and submit the remediation response. Now that again doesn't just happen overnight, so please be prepared for that. This means you are going to have to go and perform a root cause analysis, which may need to be done with consultation with others. So what do we see on this form? Again, it is in progress. Don't click submit until you've completed your response in totality. but it does just tell you about the finding. It tells you about the responses to date. And of course, we now know already that this is a deficiency. So now I can do one of a few things. I can add a new remedial action and document the root cause analysis. So let's see what happens in there. So I will say the remedial action is, I'm going to just say fix setup on SQM. If that's the case, we forgot to tick the new user box or whatever the case may be. Root cause, and this is really root cause analysis when you're going to go with the 5 whys or the fish analysis or something like that to say the new user was not ticked. The person designing the system on SQM was not aware of this function, right? That's the second why. Why were they not aware? They did not attend training. So what was the issue? All ORs must attend detailed training on the functionality in SQM. That's the root cause. That person did not know. What's the remedial action? All ORs must attend training on SQM before they are given access, or before their role is approved by the UR. So I can give that person their responsibility, they can sign it off, but I'm not going to actually approve it until they have actually completed the training. All right, great. That's our response. But what do we need to do with that? A new risk, policy, and procedure will be recorded in SQM. So someone's actually got to now add this to a policy for us. Okay, that's the response. Okay, so now that's the one allocation. Then maybe I want to also link another remedial action. So I've already got a list of remedial actions that was done on other engagement files, or on the review of the monitoring last year, or on the somewhere else there is already another remedial action. I can then also select that one. I'm not going to select our own one now because it's literally showing our own one. But if there are other remedial actions that was already created in other engagement files or so forth, I can also select them and say, okay, I haven't selected anything, so I'm just going to click close. So I can create new ones, but I can also link it to other ones. Once we're happy with that, we click submit. And that then saves it as a read-only function. Very, very helpful in really keeping record of all the remedial actions, in keeping record of all the findings raised, even if they are not deficiencies. So again, that's just going to take a second to save. Just give it a moment to save this and submit it. There we go. That's then changing over to show our submitted root cause analysis or submitted remedial action response, all only in read only. So now I can actually close this. When I go back again to the user's own site, so seeing it in operate, seeing it in findings, what you can see now is that it only shows the view, but I've completed everything. All right. Now, as the user, as the audit manager, I've done what I needed to. What is the monitor person going to see? So yeah, I'll only see what's relevant to myself as the user. I don't see other people's files, findings, nothing. But the monitor person has, apart from the findings, which was already addressed, findings was addressed, findings were signed off. What I now also have is I also have a table called remedial actions. And for remedial actions, I have the title of the remedial action with a root cause, the detail of it, how many findings are linked to it. So again, if someone had linked their finding to this, it would have been more than one, who created it, etc. And I can export these to Excel as I need to. And then further on, I also have a variety of reports. In these reports, I can then select a report for all monitoring activities and say, show me all monitoring activities. They are by default, this one is grouped by work program and monitoring activity. So you can see there's my ethical declaration work progress with a procedure saying what was the activity, what was the finding, is it a deficiency? But I can also, and in the case of others, I can also see it was a deficiency, what was it assessed as, what is the remedial action, and so forth. But if I say, actually, I don't like this, I'm going to just see all the findings, just show me all the items. Then I will have work program, monitoring activity, were there any findings, etc. All right, so that's then the case in those instances. So for monitoring, I've marked 2 items. I've actually not completed this one. You might remember from the work program, it was still incomplete. So I could then clearly see, hang on, maybe there's something wrong here. What I really like about the functionality here is where I need to then start reporting to separate individuals. Maybe these are the findings from the engagement file reviews that we've just completed. So I've actually filtered it per work program so that I can see this is partner A, partner B, partner C. And I now want to export all the findings for partner A to his PDF review. I can then select the relevant tasks and export either all the data to PDF or export the selected rows to PDF and then work with it from there. So either then include it in the discussion with the engagement partner, include it in the discussion with maybe if you need to report it to the audit committee, whatever the case may be, you will have the information from there. Right, so all monitoring activities, or you can sort them by objective. Especially if you are updating your system of quality management, you might want to actually go and say, show me the objectives, show me the risks, policies. So let's see them by each of these elements. And you can literally see the report then sorted by those elements. All right. These reports, monitoring reports, are also available under the design. You might remember when we looked at design, I mentioned monitoring activities. We designed our monitoring activities, but then I also said I'm not going to talk about monitoring reports. They literally, if I click on monitor reports in design, it is just a functionality to give the person in design access or remind them that it's there, because if they click on it, they literally go to monitor reports. Okay, so they will need to have access to that. That is monitoring. A lot of lovely functionality there. Then lastly, definitely not the least, is evaluate. So in evaluate, the functionality or the requirement here is that the person or persons with ultimate responsibility must at least once a year conclude on whether the firm is meeting the objectives of ISQM 1. Well, the overall objective, of course, is to ensure the quality of engagements and of the firm, but then we have all of those quality objectives that's basically breaking it down for us, right? So as the evaluator, ultimately you need to conclude, basically issue an assurance report, almost like an audit report. You need to issue an opinion to say whether your firm is meeting the objective of ISQM 1. What is important to note here is that, yes, your firm, you're going to need to complete it. You're going to need to ensure that it is completed by, in this case, well, initially, when you first implemented it in terms of your regulatory requirements, it was the 15th of December 2023, for example, you needed to do it, and then you need to do it at least once a year after that. So if I'm assuming you did it by the 15th of December last year, you're probably going to do it by the 15th of December this year. Practically speaking, before you can do that, you need to have completed your monitoring, because we're going to take into account, as you're soon going to see, we're going to take into account the results from the monitoring. We're going to take into account the changes that's been made to monitoring and to the system after the remedial action's been done. So your monitoring has to be completed. Your findings have to be addressed. Your remedial action needs to be identified and recorded. And then your system changed and updated. And only then can the individual that needs to perform the evaluation actually come and perform what's necessary. Now, the evaluator will start off by, again, looking at the reports, looking at what the findings were that have been raised, exactly the same reports that we had in Monitor just now. And then that person will go to evaluate programs. So just to know, evaluate actions is basically a blank page, but that would be where you raise similar actions to remedial actions and so forth. But let's hope that doesn't have to happen. But if need be, you can also raise findings and follow exactly the same process. Finding, is it a deficiency, etc., etc. But hopefully your monitoring process has already performed that and picked it up. So evaluate programs, you can see I don't have any evaluations done yet in my system. So I will create a new evaluate program. I will provide a description. So I'm going to say 2024 evaluation performed, something like that, again, so that I can actually distinguish it from the previous ones and the future ones. Click OK, and there is my evaluation created. I'm going to then go in and basically start from the top to read to the bottom. This is not like the work program that we had for the monitor work program, where you had to sign off or tick or something for each and every one of them. It does have a lot of wording, and it does provide guidance on what the standard requires you to do, essentially, and also a little bit of guidance on how to conclude on the opinion. Okay, so let's just, before we look at the detail there, in your conclusion, you're going to ask or respond to whether the deficiencies identified are considered to be neither severe nor pervasive, or severe but not pervasive, pervasive but not severe, or both severe and pervasive. Okay, so that's your first conclusion. And then based on that, you are going to conclude whether either a unmodified opinion, the firm system provides reasonable assurance that the objectives are met, or that the firm system, except for certain things, are actually still achieved. Sorry, the middle one is that the reasonable assurance that it is achieved. The top one is that the objectives are achieved except for matters identified. So that's like a qualified opinion. And then the bottom one is an adverse opinion. So actually our firm system does not meet the requirements. Okay, hopefully we never have to complete that one. But we're aiming obviously for saying it does meet, or again, remember I was going to say in the spirit of continuous improvement, it's fine to say except for 1 or 2 or 3 points, we do meet the requirements, and those will then obviously be evident from your monitoring reports. All right, so those are your conclusions, or those are your points that you need to get to. So we start with then firstly saying, as the person assigned the ultimate responsibility, I've considered the matters required, blah, 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 blah. Long story, but then to say, well, these are the things I should have done. So in case you are thinking, oh my word, I don't know what I need to do, come to your evaluate work program. You've reviewed the results of the monitoring and the remediation process, which will include the description of the activities performed. You've considered the severity and the pervasiveness of the deficiencies and the effect thereof on the achievement of the objective. You've considered, and this is where I said the remedial actions, you've considered the remedial actions that have already been designed and implemented, and the actions that has been taken by the firm at this point in time when I'm doing the evaluation. So yes, not everything has to be done. Some of the things we plan to only do next year, or some of the stuff's going to take time, but I have already thought about what we have done up to this point. And I also considered the effect of the identified deficiencies on the quality management, whether they've been appropriately corrected. And then some guidance here. When the standard says that even if you have identified deficiencies that are severe but not pervasive, what is it that needs to have happened for you to still conclude that the firm system does provide reasonable assurance? And it's really saying that when the items have been appropriately remediated and corrected at the time of the evaluation, you can still say it does provide. So it was severe but not pervasive, or severe and pervasive, but everything's been appropriately, everything's been appropriately remediated and the effect has been corrected. Then you can say it's clean. Why is that? That's maybe an important point to say. It's not like in an audit of financial statements where we're looking at what happened during the financial period. We are saying, as at to date, when I'm signing this evaluation, what is my opinion of the firm's compliance with the requirements of the standard, with the objective of the standard? So even though things were a little bit chaotic during the year, today, where we are standing today, when I'm going to sign this off, I'm comfortable that it's great because, or that it is compliant, because I know we fixed what was wrong. Yes, there were things wrong during the year, we fixed them, We address the weaknesses, we address the deficiencies, but now we can say the firm's system is compliant. Okay, so that's a little bit of a change in perspective for us. And then also with the second part of the guidance to say when it is considered severe and pervasive, I've considered if the firm's actions have diminished the pervasiveness of the deficiencies. I'm comfortable it has. So the deficiencies are still severe, but no longer severe and pervasive. And so taking that into account, I get to the point of saying, except for the identified deficiencies, etc., we are compliant. So now I can actually do the, let's say, the qualified opinion in this case. And then lastly, just a few, almost want to say admin points. As the person responsible, I've been assigned the responsibility to conclude as the capacity of UR. I confirm that this evaluation is concluded within 12 months from the previous one, which is the requirement of the standard. I confirm that we've documented what action is taken in response to the conclusion. So in other words, if you need working papers, you've got the working papers. And I confirm also that I will do the specific communication, or if I have done or will communicate as the standard requires. And again, it's with the staff, with your regulator, etc., as may be necessary. Then I'll do that. And then confirm the evaluation was performed in terms of the standard, and you can then do your selection to say severe but not pervasive, and maybe I'll then choose the qualified opinion and conclude, sign off the opinion. Right, so really in terms of, I just want to say the paperwork, the legwork on the system that is necessary is relatively limited for the evaluator, but a lot of the work has been done by the persons doing the monitoring, and even the persons fixing the system on the design side for the evaluator to then basically just conclude on what has been done. So the evaluator will heavily rely on what's been done by the monitoring person and what's been done by the operationally responsible people who will fix, if I can use those words, who will fix the system in the design side to help the evaluator to get to the right conclusion, the right response in the evaluation module. Right, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the system then, because what you would have then done is before you could come back here, you would have gone and fixed what needed to be fixed in the design. So then you basically just start all over in your circle: design, publish, operate, continuously monitor, look at your overview dashboards, do the monitoring at intervals as necessary, etc. So I only showed you one or two of the monitor work programs. Remember that you will have a work program for every engagement file that needs to be monitored, and you will have probably various monitoring work programs for different times in the year. If you could choose to do some monitoring in Q1, that will possibly have a work program Q2, Q3, Q4. If you do everything once a year, that will be a very long monitoring work program. If you do, like I showed you, just the ethical declaration process, that will be a shortish one with a few procedures to deal with that and put it to bed. All right, so yeah, that is dependent on how you schedule your timing of your monitoring activities. Right. Ladies and gentlemen, as I said, that brings us to the end of the session. I'm going to open the floor now for questions. If any of you have any other questions, you are most welcome to send me those questions and I will address them. I have a question about CPD certificates. You will need to just confirm with Caseware Africa. Unfortunately, I almost want to say I'm presenting, but I'm not 100% sure. I suspect they will be able to give you a certificate of attendance. But please, just if you don't get that automatically, just also check with the person from that email where you registered. I have another question here to say, if we use the SQM for 2 to 5 years and then decide to discontinue SQM to use internally developed software, will we still be able to have access to the data that we've done for the previous period? I am quite sure and very convinced you will have access to that. I'm not entirely sure the format of that, but you will need access to that data. So there will be a way in which you can have access to that data, yes. because you need access for a period of time. In the South African environment, the RBA just issued a rule to say that you need to have that for, if I remember correctly, 5 completed years as well as the current periods. I mean, that's quite a long period of time. So yes, you will be able to have access to that. The format in which you can have access, I'm not entirely sure. Great question, thanks. Please feel free to submit any of your other questions. I'm happy to respond to those and to address them. We've got enough time to deal with them, or for me to show you something again if you want me to show you something again, even if it was from the design stage or something. If you want to just link them again, please feel free to let me know. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to just confirm, I will wait on the call for questions, but if any of you need to log off the call, you are welcome to go. Thank you very much for your attendance, but I will also still be around for a while. So I've got a question here. How do I get a Caseware Cloud account? I will have to ask, if you want to, I can ask the Caseware sales representatives to contact you, but that is part of purchasing SQM. So when you purchase SQM, you also get the Caseware Cloud account with that. If you're already a Caseware Cloud user, let's say, for example, you also use it for your engagements, then you will just activate your SQM that's already on your Caseware Cloud account. So if you could perhaps just give me an indication if you want me to let one of the salespeople contact you, then they can help you with that. Another question on, will we be sent the recordings? The recordings will be made available. I know that at the very least they will be on YouTube. I'm not sure if they're going to let you know when they are or send you the links by email necessarily. We'll obviously just wait for today's recording to be concluded, and then we will start making them available. Let's say maybe by the end of this week, or otherwise early next week, this should be available. But I don't do them myself, but I know they're normally quite quick on making those available. So the recordings will be made available, definitely. It will be on YouTube as well, so quite freely available on the Caseware Africa YouTube channel. But I think also normally in their webinars afterwards, they also send an email to say the link is there. If they don't, though, you can just go have a look at the YouTube channel.